Okay guys, welcome back. I think in the last video I said that in this video I was going to make a submission form so that users can submit a review. But then I realized to myself when I was looking at the table that when we submitted reviews in the admin panel, we had to say who the author was. And I just thought it's not worth starting the form yet before we've created registration. And that makes sense because we've just created a login and logout form, and we should create a registration form before we go ahead and create a review submit form. So to start off with, I'm just going to go to where we have registration here. I'm not sure it has to go in here, but I'm going to put it here anyway. I'm going to look at that login form. To be honest, what we're creating is almost exactly the same. So I'm literally going to steal that. I'm going to take that, let's duplicate that, and let's call it register.html. And let's see, yep, so we were going to extend the base HTML so we get our navigation bar. This in here is our block content, so that's going to be the part that replaces what's inside the base HTML. In fact, let's change that to registration form so people know that this is for registration form. The method is going to be post. In this case, I don't think there's going to be an action. Let me remove that. If I've made a mistake, then I'll bring it back. And we never spoke about this last time. We never spoke about the difference between post and get, which I'll do in a second. Should I leave errors in? I'm going to remove errors this time. Okay, so basically it's the same thing. And I've got a button here as well. Okay, and the button, instead of saying login, let's change that to create account. Okay, so that's the form done. Let's talk very quickly about get and post, and then we'll go into more detail in post in just a moment as we start coding our form. When we looked at the APIs, let's just get the API that we had up again. Okay, so when we use this API here, if you remember, what we had was we used a get API. Okay, and most of the requests that we've been doing so far have been get APIs. So, get requests. So what that basically means is when you click on something on your page, you're making a get request from the server. So you're trying to get a page or to get some information. Okay. However, in the case of submitting a form or logging in, actually we were doing post requests. Now, when we did the post request for the login, we were giving data and passing that through to the server. But because we use Django's built-in login form, we didn't have to write any sort of custom function to deal with that request that was being posted in. Okay, so to understand this better, I'm gonna load up our views again, and we're just gonna look at the one that we had before. So we've got a film review here, and what we're gonna do this time, that was a whole, let's minimize that, there's a lot of stuff in the way. So we've got two reviews. We've got one for the home page, we've got one for review. Let's create a new one. Let's say define registration. Okay, so as always, our functions have to submit a request. And now what we're going to say is, oh actually no, before we do that, I should import something else as well. So as well as get object 404 and render, we also want to import redirect, and that will make sense in a minute. And we also want to import, if you remember when we did the login form and the logout, we used some of the auth functions, and they were views. This time we're going to say from Django.contrib.auth.forms. This time we want to import user creation form. Now this is a built-in form. That's what Django's made, that we can use. We can have custom creation forms, user creation forms. But since we're just doing something basic, it makes sense that we just use Django as one, and it comes with a lot of things built into it, which we'll talk about in a bit as well. So we're going to start off by saying that if the request, so basically if when we submit the form, or we're saying if that method is a post, okay, if that method is a post, then we want to say the form is equal to user creation form, and the data should be the post data. So let's just talk about it for 1 second. So if we go back to the HTML document we just created, where is it? Register form. Okay, so when we created our form, okay, basically when we click on the submit button, there's an action happening here, and the method is a post. So basically we are putting some information or giving some information into or we're sending information into the server. Okay, so I don't know if I have to make that capitals, but I've made it capitals because it's capitals in my views file here. So what we're saying is if request.method is equal to post, then the form is equal to user creation form, and then the data that has been inputted into the post, into the form later, what do you call it, text boxes. So then we're going to say if form dot is underscore valid, okay, and this is interesting because, like I said, when Django built this user creation form, they sort of created a whole bunch of validation checks that go with it. So for example, making sure that there isn't a user already with the same username or the same email, or maybe that the two passwords that you enter, so the password 1 and password 2, making sure that that there isn't a mismatch. So these checks are done without you having to code any of that in this function. So it's just checking if it's valid. So if the form is valid, then what we're saying is form dot save, which what will then happen is that will take that data that's been entered into that form and it will save it into the database. Now, like I said to you guys before, when we looked at the models, well, there is no models here on the in the programming project, but like we said, there is a user table in the SQL database, and that table is actually called user. And we see that when we go into the admin page. So we'll go back to that in a second and we will double check it, yeah? And you'll see what I'm talking about if you're not sure. So there is a user table, and it just checks that that user table doesn't already have someone with that username or that email, and that your passwords match. And then what we want to do is we want to return, and this is why we imported redirect. Okay, so what we're basically saying is redirect, and I want to redirect to home, and we're going to make some changes to home in a second as a result of this. So that's what happens if the form is a post method, okay? But the problem with that is, if you think about it, this registration page is going to be requested twice, okay? And there's going to be two methods that are called on it. So it's only going to be a post method if the form has been filled in and you've clicked on the button. So then there's information to send which has been filled into the text boxes. That's when that comes back to the server. So what we're saying here is if it's not a post method, then in that case it's going to be a get method. Okay, and if it's a get method, we're just going to say form equals user creation form. And then really we don't do anything, so we're not going to create the form. Django's done that for us. Okay, and if it is a user creation form, lastly what we're going to say is let's do another context like we did previously. So we're going to say context equals form and form. Okay, so right, and then we need to return as well. So we're going to say return render. So this time we're rendering, we're not redirecting. We're going to return, we're going to render, sorry, the request, which is going to be to bring the page up, and the page is situated here in registration. So we're going to say registration / and then the page is called register.html, register.html. And also we want to pass in our context. So basically we want to say that when you're loading up that HTML page, okay, the context here is going to be form. And let's go back to the page here for a second so you understand what I mean. So here when we say form, this is the context that we're talking about. So in the two curly brackets here, you know that we're loading something. This is usually the context. So we load it, and the context is, if we go back to our views again, we're saying that the context is the form that comes from Django's forms that we've just imported. Okay, so I think we need to try that out now. Actually, I've made a mistake. Well, I have made a mistake as such, but I forgot something. So silly of me. I'm now looking for. There's a register button, but we haven't attached that to anywhere yet. So let's do that very quickly. Okay, so what we're missing here is in our URLs page, we need to create a path for that registration form. Okay, so I'm going to say path, and then I'm going to say if the path is register, then let's register / then the views that we want is, we wanted to say views dot I believe it was registration. Let's double check. It was registration. Let's borrow that and let's paste it there. Okay, and then let's just give it a name. So name equals register, comma, and I think what I'm saying is import views. So yeah, import the views, but I think there's a problem here because my registration page is in templates there. It should still work, but if not, then we'll try and fix that in a second. Let's so we've updated the URLs. So let's save our views. Let's save our register page as well. In fact, what we might as well do as well is if we go back to our, while we're here, where's our base template? There's the base template, and let's just update now the register. So I can do that now. I can say, right, so if I click on register, then the URL is equal to was it register? I keep forgetting. Let's save that anyway, we'll soon find out. I believe it was register. Okay, so oops, it's saying here no module name Django contrib.all form. Where is that file? On the views file on line 4 it says import user creation form. Hold on, that's on my views. Django contrib auth.form. Oh, forms, silly man. There we are. That should work, hopefully. Yep. Okay, good. All right. So if we go to here, let's refresh that. It's working. Let's click on register. Yay! And it takes us to this registration page that has been created for us. So, and like I said, this is sort of done by Django itself. I've not had to do any of this. Okay. But let's do a test as well. Actually, let's do something. Let's on a new tab, let's create an in private window so that I'm not logged in, and let's type in, no, not that one, sorry. Actually, I've got it saved here as localhost. There we are. So what I want to do here is I want to go back to the other one, and let me make sure I'm logged in on this one, admin, and my password was Mr. Mullah 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. Okay, and let's open up users, and you can see that there's only one user here. It's just me. Okay, and I've got my made up email address and blah blah blah. So now what I want to do is I want to extend, I want to see if a new one comes up. So let's go to our new one here. We're not logged in on this one. We go to register, and on the username, let's type in test, and the password, let's do, I don't know, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Will it allow me to do that? A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Let's do HI. Is it because it might not be long enough? Oh, okay, what are we saying here? We're saying the post method didn't return a HTTP response object, it returned a none instead. Okay. Let's see my mistake. Let's have a look. Okay, I think what's happened there is that, oops. I think that what's happened there is when we submitted, where are we? So when we submit the form, if it's valid, it saves it. Okay, and then we didn't say what to do if it wasn't valid. So I believe this may work. Let's double check. If it's not valid, then I just want to do the same as this again. I want to, once again, let's take that context and let's paste it there. Okay, so basically it's going to render the form again. Oh, but then there's a problem. No, yeah, the form should be, should I also copy that? Let's copy that as well. There must be a better way to do this actually. Let's try that. Okay, so I think the problem was that I put in a password that was not valid. Let's reset that again. So let's say can be test, and let's type in something that might be a bit better. Okay, so let's type in, I don't know, let's put in 2 dictionary words. Okay, let's put in tractor and base. Tractor, how random was that? Okay, let's see, and I'll never remember this later as well. Okay, so this time it hasn't done the same thing. So I think what happened is because I put in a password that wasn't valid enough. So what should really happen is, let's try that again actually. So it's taking me back home, and by default it's not, I don't think I'm registered actually, am I? I don't know. Let's register again. Can I do that? I don't know, let's see. Right, let's put in fact, hold on, let's double check something. If we go back to here and we refresh this, right, we can see that test has been created. All right, so now there's a second user in the table by the name of test. So let's add some more. Let's add some more in there. Let's go back. Let's add a new user. Let's say test2. Okay, and let's do the same thing again. So A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I. And if I do that, it loads the page back up this time. So, but there's no error message. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to import one other thing before I move on to the next thing we're going to do. So I'm going to say from Django, from Django.contrib, from contrib, import messages. Okay, and then what I want to do is, if a sign up is successful, I'm going to change that actually, and rather than go to the home page, I'm going to say go to login. So return to the page, redirect to the page login, and then I want to say before that, let's put a message in. So let's say messages, messages dot success. So on success we want to say request, let's say account created, now login. So it redirects you to that page, plus username. So let's try that. Let's save that. Let's go back to here. Okay, so now that this is solved, we need to create a space on the login page that we can display these messages, so that once they've clicked, once they've submitted the form, and it takes you back to login, you get some kind of a success message appear on the login page before you log in. You want to say, let's create a p tag, so p, and let's give an ID, so ID equals messages, oops, ID equals, should be in quotes, ID equals messages, and then in between here we just want the variable that we're passing through called message, and then we're going to say and for. Okay, so now we've got somewhere to display our message. Let's see if it works then. Yeah, so let's go back to our URLs, oh sorry, our views. Let's save that. Let's hope it works. So registration form test 2, and let's try driver and pen, and driver and pen. Click on create account. Cool, so we've got a message here. It says Django contrib messages storage fallback. Oh, why isn't it displayed the message correctly? Oh, I think I found my message. My problem, sorry. My mistake is that here I said for message in messages, and then I've printed out the messages. It should be message, so just the message itself. So if I say that, and let's try that one more time. Let's go back to our login. Oh, sorry, our registration. And in our registration, we're saying test 2. Actually, no, let's do a test 3 because I think test 2 just got created. Okay, let's do the same password. Driver and pen, and driver and pen. Let's create account. Yay. Okay, this time it's worked. So it says account created, now login, test 3. So that works. So we get our message up as well. So if we go back to, let's go back to here. Okay, we had test 1, and we should have had 2 extra users created now, test 2 and test 3. Okay, so now that's working as well. So we've got our messages working. Notice that I haven't put messages in if something goes wrong. So for example, under views, if they get it wrong, the reason why I'm not going to put a message in is because that message is probably going to be, where are we? If we go to register, for example, it already tells you, you know, you have to have certain characters. So if this page keeps reloading, I mean, the prompt is already here really, that you can't be too similar to your information, blah blah blah. So that's our registration page done as well. Now what I want to do is actually, I want to make just 1 or 2 edits. Okay, so I think it'd be better if when registering, the user is able to put in more than just the username and the password. Okay, because look, when we look at our profiles here, there's space for more. So for example, if I go to Mr. Muller, I could say, look, first name, last name, and it's asking for email address, and username is Mr. Muller. Yeah, but actually when we're registering, we're not having to put email address in. I've only done that because I signed up as a super administrator, sorry, a super user. So now I want to change the form a little bit, just so that we add these other things that we could include into it. Now the way I'm going to do that, inside my folder where my reviews app is, I'm going to create another file. So let's go to reviews, let's create another file, and let's call this one forms.py. So create another py form called forms, and we're going to import something called model form. So from Django.forms, we're going to import model form, and then from Django.contrib.auth.forms, I mustn't forget the S this time, forms import user creation form, and there's one more, from Django.contrib, from Django.contrib.auth.models, we want to import the user, because we're gonna work with the user. And then lastly, from Django import forms. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to create a template that we want to use. So we're going to create a new class, and we're going to call this create user form, and the template that we're going to use, so the class that we want to inherit from, is user creation form. And I'm just going to say class meta. Okay, now this is the part, because basically what we're saying is the class meta is kind of it's about the form itself. So what we're going to include, so we're going to say model is equal to user. Okay, so basically it uses the table called user that that is already built into Django. It's a table in a database, and the fields that we want to see are let's say email and username, and let's go first name, last name, and then we want them to be able to put in password 1, and we do have to say password 1 and password 2. So basically these are the fields that we want to appear in our form this time. I'm just including a few more. Generically, sort of username, password, and password 1 and password 2 is included, and that's kind of what we need there. So let's save that. Okay, so back in my views file, I'm now going to import the form from the forms file that we created. So I'm going to say from this level, so from this folder here, okay, from dot here forms, we want to import what did I call it? Was it user form? Let's go here, create user form. So I'll take that, okay, and I'll go back to views, and we want to import create user form, and I think, is that it? So now we're looking at our form, and we're going to make a small change. Okay, so before we used the user creation form, but now our form is going to be different. So now our form is going to be create user form. So that was the new one that we created, the new one. I think if I was to put the form here, create user form, and I was to put in form equals create user form. So by including a variable for the user creation form there, the create user form, that would probably enable me to not have to put that there, because in context form is now already referenced up here. No, okay, I should say form equals create user form, and then I wouldn't have to do it here either. So I think I can remove it from there. Let's save that. Let's run our form again. Refresh. Oh, why is that? Okay, and the error that I got again was because I'm making typo mistakes. Here the file is called forms, and I've called it form. So if I do that now, save. Now it says no module name Django.form. What line is that on? That is on line 1. Line 1 of what file? Forms.py. So if I go back to my forms one, again, I think that should be forms. Let's save that. And now it seems like we're loading without a problem. Okay, so let's refresh. Wait, so now we've got our new form. Okay, so in our new form now I can put in, you know, email, username, etc., etc. So let's try this out. Let's try one out. Let's try let's make something up. So let's say, I don't know, asdfgh@gmail.com, and it doesn't matter because my program isn't set up to email anyone right now. Let's say asdgf boom, boom, and hopefully there's no, you know what, let's not do that. Let's just say test 5, first name test guy, last name guy, password driver and pen, and driver and pen. And when we create account, cool, it says account now created for test user 5. If we go to our user, let's go home, let's go to users. Okay, and look, cool. So now what we have is we've got our username filled out with an email address and a first name and a last name. So it seems like our form is working now. So our registration's done. Okay, and that leads us nicely actually onto our form for submitting reviews, because now we've also seen how we can create these forms using the user creation form.